everybody, today I'm going to be making an Andes mint chocolate cake. I got this recipe from food.com, so I'll put the information below. First, you're going to need to start by heating your oven to 350 degrees. You're going to need sugar, flour, cocoa powder, baking soda, salt, eggs, buttermilk, oil, vanilla, and last but not least, Andes mints. I just picked up a bag that was pre-chopped. And I forgot to mention we'll also need some boiling water. Now, following the instructions on this cake, it's pretty simple. There's no specific order that you have to put in the ingredients as far as mixing the cake together. You just kind of dump everything in together, and once all of your ingredients are in, you just mix the cake together. Minus the boiling water. The boiling water will be the last thing that we add to this mix. Now, this recipe didn't say specifically what kind of oil to use, so I just used what I normally use in baking, which is actually coconut oil. I just tend to like coconut oil because it's healthier, and plus it does add a little bit to the flavor. It actually, I think, intensifies the flavor and just adds a little bit extra something. So right here I'm actually adding in the hot water. I'm just slowly adding it in, taking breaks in between and letting it have some time to mix in. And this batter was really runny. This is actually the runniest cake batter I think I've ever made, so I was kind of leery about it, to be honest with you, because I've never made one this thin before. So next, the recipe calls for the chopped Andes mints. I'm adding them to a bag with a little bit of flour in them so that I can coat them. Now, I honestly don't know what this purpose serves, so if anybody knows what the purpose of coating them with flour is, please leave a comment below. I would really like to know, because otherwise I have no idea. So now I'm folding them in, and once they're all folded in, I'm going to pour them into some cake pans that are lined with wax paper. Now, two things that I would suggest, because this is the first time I've ever made this, I would definitely make sure you have an ample amount of spray on your pans. I don't think I put enough spray. And second, when you pour in the mixture, kind of scoop out some of those mints, because they just fall to the bottom of your bowl, and it's like they only go into one pan. So you want to make sure they're evenly distributed. While the cake is cooling, I'm going to make the ganache. The ganache is going to take a while to cool itself, so it's best that you kind of do it in advance. That way it does have time to cool down to room temperature. So these are the ingredients you're going to need. You're going to start off with the whipping cream, and you're going to want to bring that to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, you're going to want to pour it onto the chocolate chips. And we're going to leave that and let that set so they have time to kind of melt a little bit for about 1 or 2 minutes. Once they've set, you just kind of want to stir them, and it doesn't take too long to mix them together, but I did go ahead and speed through this for you. Now, making ganache, you do want to make sure that you get all of the chocolate incorporated, because if you don't and there's little bits and pieces, when you go to pour it on the cake, you will see little lumps and bumps of the chocolate that wasn't melted. So once it's mostly melted together, I'm going to go ahead and add in the vanilla and stir that in thoroughly. For the buttercream, we're going to need confectioner's sugar, butter, peppermint extract, vanilla extract, green food coloring, and milk. So what I'm going to start off by doing is creaming the butter together a little bit and getting that mixed, and then slowly add in the confectioner's sugar, mixing that, and then adding a little bit more and alternating with the milk and so forth. Now, for this recipe, I did not use all of the milk that the recipe called for. I believe the recipe called for a cup of milk, and I only ended up using about 3/4 of a cup of milk. And still, honestly, I felt like the buttercream was a little bit too soft. Looking back at it, I probably should have added a little bit more confectioner's sugar to stiffen it up a little bit. So next time, I'll probably end up doing that. The gel that I used to color the frosting took about 6 drops to get it close to the color that I was looking for. It didn't quite get to the color that I wanted to, but I think it was just the overall color of the green I had. I just didn't have the exact right color green, but it came pretty close. But as you can see the frosting, it's kind of still a little too wet, so next time, like I said, I'm gonna add a little bit more confectioner's sugar. But here I am frosting one of the cake layers. Now this cake is super dense and moist. So going back to spraying your pans, make sure they are sprayed liberally. And do not skip the step of putting down the wax paper. If you skip that step, trust me, you will not get the cake out of the pan. It was a struggle in itself just to get it out, and I followed the steps. This recipe also calls that you have 3 8-inch cake pans. I don't have 3 8-inch cake pans. I just used what I had, which were 2 8-inch cake pans. I had one that was a little deeper than the other, as I'm sure you could see in the video. And that may have affected it a little too. Now as far as the cook time goes, I did have to cook it for way over more than the cook time recommended, but that's just because I believe I had different size pans in there. But here I'm just actually taking off the wax paper. Now I wish I had a little bit extra time and spent more time actually doing a little bit more detail in this. This was just really plain and simple. But truth be told, I actually ran out of piping bags, and I am completely terrible when it comes to making piping bags out of Ziploc bags or out of parchment paper or wax paper. I cannot do it. I end up breaking the Ziploc bags, or the parchment paper just ends up coming undone, and it just makes an awful mess for me. But even though it's not as pretty as the pictures that I've seen online, it still was super yummy. So if you've never tried this recipe before, it's a real treat, and it really does taste like an Andes mint. So if you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to leave them below. And again, thank you for watching. Please take the time to rate, subscribe, and comment. Thanks. Bye-bye.